Okay. So once again, good afternoon all of you. In last lecture, we have discussed about the dimensionless numbers. In last lecture, we have discussed about the dimensionless numbers. Now we have to discuss the next method, that is Buckingham's pi theorem, then Rayleigh's method. So that we have to now cover. Okay. Yes, sir. Present this screen. Okay. So all of you write down the next heading. Write down methods of dimensional analysis. Write down methods of write down the next heading, methods of dimensional analysis. Methods of dimensional analysis. Methods of dimensional analysis. Write down the first method. There are two methods, that is Rayleigh's method and Buckingham's pi method. Okay, so write down the two methods. Write down first method, that is Rayleigh's method. First method, Rayleigh's method, and second, Buckingham's pi method. Buckingham's pi method. Rayleigh's method and second, Buckingham's pi method. So now we have to discuss the first method, that is Rayleigh's method. Okay, so all of you give the first heading as a Rayleigh's method. Rayleigh's method. Rayleigh's method. First method, that is Rayleigh's method. So these two methods are for the dimensional analysis. We have to derive the equation in the form of another dimensionless number. So for that there is a need of dimensional analysis method. So for that we have to use these two methods, that is Rayleigh's method and Buckingham's pi method. Okay. So first method is Rayleigh's method. So write down if write down if x is a variable, if x is a variable, if x is a variable which depends on, if x is a variable and which depends on x1 comma x2 comma x3, x is a variable which depends on x1 comma x2 comma x3, the functional equation can be written as the functional equation can be written as the functional equation can be written as write down इथं काय x हा व्हेरिएबल आणि तो कशावरती डिपेंड आहे x इज डिपेंड्स अपॉन दी x1 x2 x3 so x is a function of what, x is depending upon the x1 x2 x3 dash dash dash. Okay, so all of you write down x is equal to function of, okay, x काय तर व्हेरिएबल आणि तो कशावरती डिपेंड आहे x1 x2 x3 dash dash dash, so that x4 x5 is there. So x is function of x1 comma x2 comma x3 dash dash dash, and this is the equation number 1. This is the equation number 1. And write down the meaning. X is nothing but dependent variable. X हा काय आहे तर dependent variable, हा कशावरती तरी depend आहे. So therefore write down x is dependent variable. X is dependent variable. X is dependent variable. Then next line, x1 comma x2 comma x3, x1 comma x2 comma x3 are independent variable. x1 comma x2 comma x3 are independent variable, are independent variable. Okay, so in the form of constant, how to write this equation? So all of you write down equation 1 can be written as, equation 1 can be written as, okay, so x is function of x1 x2 x3, so therefore we have to write down the x is equal to constant into x1 raised to a comma x2 raised to b comma x3 raised to c dash dash dash, and this is the equation number 2. Okay, So we have taken the constant. So x is equal to constant into bracket x1 raised to a, comma x2 raised to b, comma x3 raised to c, and this is the equation number 2. Okay, and what is the meaning of c? C is nothing but constant. And what is the meaning of a, b, c? These are the arbitrary powers. Okay, so all of you write down where c is a constant, where c is a constant, where c is a constant, and a comma b comma c are arbitrary powers. A comma b comma c are arbitrary powers. Okay, so how to calculate these arbitrary powers? So by comparing the powers of the fundamental dimensions on both sides, we have to calculate the values of the ABC. Okay, so ABC is nothing but our arbitrary powers. So write on the next line, the values of A, B, C up to N are obtained. The values of A, B, C dash 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 N are obtained by comparing the values of A, B, C up to N are obtained by comparing the powers of the fundamental dimension on both sides. Fundamental dimension on both sides. Okay, so the values of ABC up to N are obtained by comparing the powers of the fundamental dimensions on the both sides. Fundamental dimensions on the both sides. Okay, so now we have to solve one derivation on one problem related to this. Write down the first problem. Write down the first problem. All of you write down. Find the find an expression. We have to derive an expression by using this method. Find write down first. Find an expression for the drag force find an expression for the drag force on smooth sphere. Find an expression for the drag force drag force on smooth sphere of diameter d. Smooth sphere of diameter capital D. Smooth sphere of diameter D, capital D, comma, moving with a uniform velocity v, moving with a uniform velocity v, in a fluid, moving with a uniform velocity v in a fluid having density rho and dynamic viscosity mu. Okay, once again, find an expression for the drag force. आपल्याला काय करायचं आहे? ड्रॅग फोर्स साठी एक्सप्रेशन फाइंड आउट करायचं आहे. ऑन स्मूथ स्फिअर ऑफ डायमीटर दिलेला आहे d, युनिफॉर्म व्हेलॉसिटी दिलेली आहे v, डेन्सिटी दिलेली आहे रो आणि डायनामिक विस्कॉसिटी दिलेली आहे म्यू. ओके, तर हा ड्रॅग फोर्स जो आहे तो काय आहे तर व्हेरिएबल आहे आणि तो कशावरती डिपेंड आहे? डायमीटर, डेन्सिटी, व्हेलॉसिटी अँड डायनामिक विस्कॉसिटी. Okay, so all of you write down the step 1. Write down the step 1. Write down the drag force is function of step 1. The drag force is function of the drag force कशा कशाचं फंक्शन आहे म्हणून सांगितलेलं आहे. तर write down first quantity, that is diameter. Write down first diameter, that is capital D. Second velocity v. Then third, density rho, density rho, and dynamic viscosity mu. ओके, तर ड्रॅग फोर्स कशा कशाचं फंक्शन असणार आहे? डायमीटर, व्हेलॉसिटी, डेन्सिटी आणि विस्कॉसिटी. ओके, सो वी हॅव टू राईट डाऊन दॅट mathematical equation. Drag force is nothing but F. So F is function of these four quantities. So write down mathematically force is equal to F is equal to force is a function of diameter, force is a function of diameter, then velocity, that is d, v, rho and mu. Diameter, velocity, density and dynamic viscosity. Force is a function of diameter, velocity, rho and mu. Okay, so in the form of constant we have to write down the equation. Force is equal to constant into bracket d raised to a comma v raised to b comma rho raised to c comma mu raised to d, and this is the equation number 1. Okay, here we are considering the constant and arbitrary powers. Okay, c is a constant and abcd are the arbitrary powers. Okay, so write down that equation. F is equal to c into bracket d raised to a comma v raised to b comma rho raised to c comma mu raised to d. This is the equation number 1, and where c is a non-dimensional constant. C is a non-dimensional constant. Okay, so all of you write down c is a non-dimensional constant. C is a non-dimensional constant. Okay, then we have to write down the equation in the form of dimensions of that particular parameter. जी काही quantity तर त्याचे dimensions लिहायचे आहेत आपल्याला. Okay, so at the left hand side there is a force. So what is the dimension for the force? Force, that is m l t raised to minus 2. All of you write down. Already we have written the dimensions of the all quantities. Okay, so in that way, what is the dimension for the force? Force is nothing but, what is the unit of force? Newton. Newton is nothing but kg meter per second square. So for the kg, m is there, for meter there is a l, and per second square, that is t raised to minus 2. So in that way we have to write down the dimension of each quantity. So force, what is the dimension for the force? That is m l t raised to minus 2. Okay, so already we have written the dimensions of the all quantities. So from that we have to write down the dimension of force, that is m l t raised to minus 2 is equal to c into, what is our first quantity? That is diameter. So what is the dimension for the diameter? That is l. What is the unit of diameter? That is meter. So what is the dimension of meter? That is l. So l raised to, what is the arbitrary constant? That is a, l raised to a. Then what is the velocity? What is the dimension for the velocity? That is l t raised to minus 1, because unit is meter per second. So for the meter, l is there, per second is nothing but t raised to minus 1. So write down l t raised to minus 1 raised to b, l t raised to minus 1 raised to b. Then density kg per meter cube. So therefore m l raised to minus 3 raised to c, m l raised to minus 3 raised to bracket raised to c. And for the dynamic viscosity, what is the dimension? That is m l raised to minus 1 t raised to minus 1 raised to d. M l raised to minus 1 t raised to minus 1 raised to d. Okay, so in the form of dimensions we have written the our equation number 1. Okay, now we have to compare the powers of the both sides. ज्या काय powers आहेत ते आपण काय करणार आहे, दोन्ही साइडला कंपेअर करणार आहे. Okay, so for the m, what are the powers in the left hand side? m ची power काय तर 1 आहे. So m, for the m, what is the power of the left hand side? That is 1. 1 is equal to, and what is the power at the right hand side for the l? For the l, so l raised to a is there, then l raised to b is there. Sorry, m च लिहायला आपण, sorry, So for the m, there is only one. There in the two equation m is present in the third quantity and fourth quantity. So m raised to c is there and m raised to d is there. So we are comparing the powers of the both sides. So in the left hand side power of m is 1 and in the right hand side power of m is c plus d is there. Okay. In the third equation m is there. In the fourth equation m is there. So therefore c plus d. We are comparing the powers. Okay. So 1 is equal to c plus d. Then we have to compare the powers of the L. So in the left hand side, what is the power of L? That is 1. 1 is equal to, in the right hand side, there is a L is present in the three parameters. That is L raised to A, L raised to B, and then L raised to minus 1 raised to D. Okay. Then L raised to minus 3 into C. So all in four parameters, there is a L present. So we have to comparing the powers. So in the left hand side, 1 is equal to what? L raised to A is there. So A plus L raised to B is there. So B, then L raised to minus 3c, so minus 3c is there, and L raised to minus 1d, so therefore minus d is there. Okay, so similarly we have to compare the powers of the t. Okay, so in the left hand side t raised to minus 2 is there, so minus 2 is equal to, what are the powers of the t in the right hand side? T raised to minus b is there and t raised to minus d is there, so minus b minus d. Okay, so write down, these are the comparing the powers for the mlt. So next line write down, there are four unknowns. There are four unknowns, but इक्वेशन किती आहेत? 3 आहेत आणि अननोन किती आहेत? 4 आहेत. There are four unknowns but equations 3. Therefore it is not possible to find, the values of a, b, c and d. Therefore, it is not possible to find the values of A, B, C and D. A, B, C and D. Okay, so write down that equation again. C is nothing but 1 minus D. B is equal to 2 minus D. So therefore A is equal to what? 1 minus B minus 3 into bracket 1 minus D. So from that A is equal to what? 1 minus 2 minus d plus 3 minus 3d plus d. So from the calculation we get the 1 minus 2 plus d plus 3 minus 2d. So a is equal to 2 minus d. Okay, so it is not possible to calculate the all unknowns. So we have only simplified in the form of equation. C is nothing but 1 minus d, b is equal to 2 minus d. So that value is put into the equation of a. So from that we get the a is equal to 2 minus d. So from equation 1, so whatever the values of abcd we get, we have to put that values. So f is equal to c into d raised to, what is the value of a? That is 2 minus d. Then what is the value of b? That is 2 minus d. Then what is the value of c? 1 minus d, and mu raised to d. Okay, so by the simplification of this, we get the equation of force. So write down that equation, simplify that equation. So by the simplification we get the f is equal to c into bracket rho into d square v square. F is equal to c into bracket rho into d square v square into bracket mu divided by rho vd bracket raised to d. Mu divided by rho vd bracket raised to d. So from that we get the equation for the f. F is equal to rho d square v square function of mu divided by rho vd. Okay, so we get the correlation between the drag force and the density, diameter, velocity and dynamic viscosity. So this is the relation. Okay, so this method having some of the drawbacks. So all of you write down the drawbacks of this Rayleigh's method. Whatever the drawbacks of this Rayleigh's method, we have to write down the drawbacks of this method. All of you completed that equation. F is equal to what? Rho into d square v square function of mu upon rho into v into d. Okay, instead of constant
we have taken the function as a mu upon rho in divided by rho into v into d. Okay, then write down the drawbacks of the Rayleigh's method. Write down the first drawback. Write down the drawbacks of the Rayleigh's method. Drawbacks of the Rayleigh's method. Drawbacks of the Rayleigh's method. Write down the first drawback. Write down the first drawback. Does not provide any information. Does not provide any information. Does not provide any information regarding the number of dimensionless groups. Does not provide any information regarding the number of dimensionless groups to be obtained dimensionless groups to be obtained as a result of dimensional analysis as a result of dimensional analysis. Okay, does not provide any information regarding the number of dimensionless groups to be obtained. म्हणजे डायमेन्शनलेसचे जे काही ग्रुप फॉर्म होणार आहेत ते किती ऑप्टेन होऊ शकतात हे रिलेज मेथड मध्ये आपल्याला समजत नाही. ओके, सो दिस इज द फर्स्ट ड्रॉबॅक. देन राईट डाउन द सेकंड ड्रॉबॅक. राईट डाउन in case in case the number of independent variable in case the number of independent variable in case the number of independent variable becomes more than 4 in case the number of independent variable becomes more than 4 becomes more than 4 becomes more than 4 then it is very difficult more than 4 then it is very difficult to find the expression then it is very difficult to find the expression for the dependent variable. ओके, ज्यावेळेला व्हेरिएबल हे 4 पेक्षा जास्त असणार आहेत, इन केस द नंबर ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंट व्हेरिएबल्स बिकम्स more than 4 then it is very difficult to find the expression for the dependent variable. ओके, ज्यावेळेला 4 पेक्षा जास्त व्हेरिएबल असतील त्यावेळेला ते आपल्याला difficult to find out the expression for that dependent variable. Okay, so these are the two drawbacks for the Rayleigh's method. Okay, so next line, write down to remove or overcome the drawbacks. To overcome the drawbacks to remove oblique overcome the drawbacks we have to use method called Buckingham's pi method. ओके, रिलीज मेथड मध्ये हे काही जे काही ड्रॉबॅक होते ते रिमूव्ह करण्यासाठी आपल्याला कुठली मेथड यूज करायचं, वी हॅव टू यूज दी बकिंगहॅम्स पाय मेथड. ओके, दॅट मेथड इज नथिंग बट बकिंगहॅम्स पाय मेथड. Okay, so all of you give the new heading as a Buckingham's pi method. Write down the next heading, Buckingham's pi method. Buckingham's pi method. So write down the step 1, Buckingham's pi method. Write down the step 1, Buckingham's pi method. Buckingham's pi method. Step 1. Step 1. Step 1. So write down step 1. Mathematically mathematically if any variable x1 mathematically mathematically if any variable x1 depends on any variable x1 depends on independent variables depends on independent variables independent variables independent variables x2 comma x3 comma x4 up to xn. Mathematically if any variable x1 depends on independent variables x2 comma x3 comma x4 up to the xn up to the xn, the functional equation may be written as the functional equation the functional equation may be written as may be written as the functional equation may be written as. So write down the functional equation. X1 is a function of what? X1 is equal to function of x2 comma x3 comma x4 comma dash 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 up to xn, and this is the equation 1. ओके. x1 काय आहे तर डिपेंडंट व्हेरिएबल आहे, तर तो कशावरती डिपेंडंट आहे तर इंडिपेंडंट व्हेरिएबल्स वरती तो डिपेंड आहे. तर इंडिपेंडंट व्हेरिएबल्स कुठले कुठले आहेत तर x2 x3 x4 अप टू दी xn. सो देअरफॉर x1 इज अ फंक्शन ऑफ x2 comma x3 comma x4 up to the xn. This is the equation 1. Okay, so how to write this equation 1? Equation 1 can be written as, write down equation 1. How to write this equation 1? Equation 1 can be written as, so x1 is a function of, so therefore we have to take the another function and take all the quantities in the bracket. So therefore f1, this is the another function f1 of x1 comma x2 comma x3 up to the xn is equal to 0, and this is the equation 2. F1 into bracket f1 into bracket x1 comma x2 comma x3 up to the xn is equal to 0, and this is the equation number 2, and this is the equation number 2. Okay, so from this equation how many variables are there? That is n number of variables is there. What is the notation for the number of variables? That is n. And what is the notation for the fundamental dimensions? That is m. Okay, so all of you write down number of variables is nothing but n. Number of variables is equal to n. Number of variables is equal to n. Number of variables is equal to n. The next line, fundamental dimension is equal to m. 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 Okay, then how to find out the number of pi terms? Okay, so for that we have to use the equation as a n minus m. ओके, जे काही व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत, जे काही फंडामेंटल डायमेन्शन्स असणार आहेत, त्याचा डिफरन्स घेतला की आपल्याला काय मिळणार आहे, नंबर ऑफ पाय टर्म्स मिळणार आहेत. ओके, सो ऑल ऑफ यू राइट डाउन देयरफॉर number of pi terms is equal to, therefore number of pi terms is equal to, number of pi terms is equal to n minus m. Number of pi terms is equal to n minus m. N minus m. So therefore equation becomes, so therefore equation becomes, therefore equation becomes, so write down function of in bracket pi 1 comma pi 2 comma pi 3 up to the pi n minus m एवढ्या पाय टर्म्स असणार आहेत. पाय टर्म्स किती असणार आहेत किती असणार आहेत n मायनस m पॅटर्न्स असणार. सो देअरफॉर पाय n मायनस m is equal to 0 and this is the equation number 3. Okay, so all of you write down. So म्हणलं बघा number of variables denoted by n, number of fundamental dimension m, number of pi terms n minus m, and equation becomes f of pi 1 comma pi 2 comma pi 3 up to pi n minus m is equal to 0. This is the equation number 3. Okay, then write down this step number 2, selection of repeating variables. Write down step number 2, selection of step number 2 selection of repeating variables, selection of repeating variables, selection of repeating variables. So write down each item contain variables is equal to, प्रत्येक पायटम मध्ये किती व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत, तर त्याच्यासाठी काय इक्वेशन यूज करायचं आपल्याला m+1. Okay, so all of you write down each item contain variables is equal to, each item contain variables is equal to m+1, each item contain variables is equal to m+1, m+1. Okay, प्रत्येक पायटम मध्ये किती व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत, तर m+1 व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत, आणि प्रत्येक पायटम मध्ये किती रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत, तर ते m एवढे असणार आहेत. ओके, सो राइट डाउन each item contain repeating variables is equal to, each item contain repeating variables is equal to, repeating variables is equal to m, repeating variables is equal to m, repeating variables is equal to m. Okay, now my question is how to select this repeating variables. जे काही व्हेरिएबल्स असणार आहेत त्यामध्ये रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स कुणाला सिलेक्ट करायचं, तर हे कशावरून ठरवायचं. सो देयर आर some of the rules. So by using that we have to select the repeating variables. So write down points should be kept in view, points should be kept in view, points should be kept in view while selecting repeating variables, points should be kept in view while selecting repeating variables, while selecting repeating variables, while selecting repeating variables, points should be kept in view while selecting repeating variables, while selecting repeating variables, while selecting repeating variables. Okay, so write down the repeating variables points. Write down first point, write down the repeating variables must, the repeating variables must not form the repeating variables must not form the non-dimensional parameter, non-dimensional parameter among themselves, among themselves. The repeating variables must not form the non-dimensional parameters among themselves. ओके, तर त्याच्यामध्ये नॉन डायमेन्शनल फॉर्म तयार झाला नाही पाहिजे. जे काय आपण नॉन रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल सिलेक्ट करणार आहे By using that, there is a no formation of non-dimensional form. Okay. The repeating variables must not form the non-dimensional parameters among themselves. So write on the second, the dependent variable should not be selected. The dependent variable, the dependent variable should not be selected as the dependent variable should not be selected as a repeating variable. The dependent variable should not be selected as a variable repeating variable. फुल स्टॉप. समजले का? जो डिपेंडंट व्हेरिएबल आहे त्याला तुम्ही परत रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल म्हणून सिलेक्ट करू शकत नाही. ओके. देन राईट ऑन दी थर्ड पॉइंट no two repeating variables should have the same dimension. म्हणजे दोन याचे जर सेम डायमेन्शन असतील तर ते रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल घेऊ शकत नाही. राईट डाउन. नो टू रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स no two repeating variables should have the same dimension. सेम डायमेन्शनचे व्हेरिएबल्स आपण सिलेक्ट करू शकत नाही रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स मध्ये. ओके. नो टू रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स should have the same dimension. Should have the same dimension. Okay. Then write on the fourth point, the repeating variables should be chosen. The repeating variables the repeating variables should be chosen in such way that the repeating variables should be chosen in such a way that in such a way that in such a way that okay. So write on the first. आपल्याला रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल जर सिलेक्ट करायचे चूज करायचे आहेत तर ते कशा प्रकारे चूज करायचे. राईट ऑन द फर्स्ट पॉइंट one variable contains geometric property. One variable contains geometric property म्हणजे लेंथ असेल, डायमीटर असेल, हाईट असेल, अशी एक प्रॉपर्टी पहिला काय करायचंय रिपीट करायचंय. ओके. one variable contains geometric property. In bracket write down the what are the geometric properties. That is length is there, diameter is there, height is there, etc. These are the geometric property. ह्यातली कुठली असेल तर ती पहिला वन व्हेरिएबल घ्यायचा आहे. ओके. देन सेकंड फर्स्ट लिहिले का बघा. वन व्हेरिएबल contains geometric property. And what are the geometric properties? That is length, diameter, height, etc. Okay. Then second other variable contains flow property. नेक्स्ट जो व्हेरिएबल असणार आहे तो कुठला असली पाहिजे, फ्लो प्रॉपर्टी असली पाहिजे. मग काय असेल, व्हेलॉसिटी असेल, ऍक्सलरेशन असेल. ओके. सो राईट ऑन other variable contains flow property that is velocity acceleration etc. Then what about the third variable? थर्ड व्हेरिएबल कंटेन फ्लुइड प्रॉपर्टी. ओके. पहिली काय घ्यायची, जिओमेट्रिक प्रॉपर्टी घ्यायची, दुसरी काय घ्यायची, फ्लो प्रॉपर्टी घ्यायची, आणि तिसरी काय घ्यायची, फ्लुइड प्रॉपर्टी घ्यायची. सो व्हॉट आर द फ्लुइड प्रॉपर्टीज? डेन्सिटी इज देयर, वेट डेन्सिटी इज देयर, विस्कोसिटी इज देयर. सो दीज आर द फ्लुइड प्रॉपर्टीज. ओके. सो राइट डाउन थर्ड वेरिएबल contain fluid property. Third variable contain fluid property. In bracket write down that is mass density comma weight density comma dynamic viscosity etc. that is third variable contain fluid property, that is mass density, comma weight density, comma mu etc. Mu etc. Okay. So next line, write down the choice of repeating variables in most of fluid mechanics problem may be. तर चॉईस जास्तीत जास्त काय असतोय बघा, द चॉईस ऑफ रिपीटिंग व्हेरिएबल्स, the choice of repeating variables in most of fluid mechanics problems, the choice of repeating variables in most of fluid mechanics problems, fluid mechanics problems may be, fluid mechanics problems may be, fluid mechanics problem may be, fluid mechanics problem may be. So write down the choices. First, length, velocity, density. बघा तिन्ही प्रॉपर्टी कव्हर केलेल्या आहेत. जिओमेट्रिक प्रॉपर्टी म्हणजे लेंथ, त्याच्यानंतर फ्लो प्रॉपर्टी म्हणजे व्हेलॉसिटी आणि फ्लुइड प्रॉपर्टी म्हणजे डेन्सिटी. ओके, तर ह्या वेगवेगळ्या चॉईसेस आहेत, एल व्ही रो, देन सेकंड डायमीटर, velocity, density, then third length, velocity, viscosity, then diameter, velocity, viscosity. So these are the most of the cases we have to use these choices. Okay, we have to take this as a repeating variables, we have to take this as a repeating variables. Okay, so this is the step number 2. Then write down the step number 3. Step number 3. Step number 3, write down the each term is written as, then each term is written as, then each term is written as. तर प्रत्येक term कशी लिहायची बघा. So write down how to write the pi 1. Pi 1 is equal to x to raise to a1, x3 raise to b1, x4 raise to c1 into x1. Similarly, pi 2 is equal to x to raise to a2, x3 raise to b2, x4 raise to c2, x5. Dash 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 pi n minus m, x to raise to a n minus m, x3 raise to b n minus m, x4 raise to c n minus m into xn, and this is the equation number 4. Okay, so all of you write down the step number 3. The each term is written as, so write down the pi 1, pi 2, pi n minus m. Write down pi 1, pi 2, pi n minus m, and this is the equation number 4. Okay, then write down the step number 4. Write down the step number 4. Write down a1 comma b1 comma c1 comma a2 comma b2 comma c2 are the constant. A1 comma b1 comma c1, a2 comma b2 comma c2 are the constant which are determined by, which are determined by considering dimensional homogeneity. Okay, how to calculate that constants, constants which are determined by considering dimensional homogeneity. Dimensional homogeneity. So put next line. Put these values in equation 4. Put these values in equation number 4. Put these values in equation number 4 and find the values of pi 1 comma pi 2 comma pi 3 up to the pi n minus m. Okay. Constant कसे find out करायचे तर ते dimensional homogeneity जो concept आहे तो use करायचा and by using that we have to find out the values of the arbitrary constants and put these values into equation 4 and find out the values of pi 1 comma pi 2 comma pi 3 dash dashes up to the pi n minus m. प्रॉब्लेम सोडवताना तुम्हाला हे कळेल कशा प्रकारे स्टेप नंबर 4 यूज करायचे, स्टेप नंबर 3, स्टेप नंबर 2, स्टेप नंबर 1. Okay, then write on this step number 5. What is the step number 5? Substitute the values of pi's in equation 3. जी काही पायच्या व्हॅल्यू आपल्याला मिळणार आहे त्या इक्वेशन नंबर 3 मध्ये काय करायचे आहेत, सबस्टिट्यूट करायचे आहेत. ओके, सो राइट डाउन दिस स्टेप नंबर 5. Step number 5, substitute the values. Step number 5, substitute the values of pi's in equation number 3. Okay, then write down the substitute the values of pi's in equation 3. Then next line, the final general equation, the final general equation for the phenomenon, the final general equation for the phenomenon, the final general equation for the phenomenon may then he obtained, the final general equation for the phenomenon may then he obtained by, then he obtained by expressing any one of the pi term as a function of the other, expressing any one of the pi term, expressing any one of the pi term as function of the other, any one of the pi term as function of the other, function of the other, the function of the other. Okay, so this is the steps for the Buckinham's pi method. So in that way, step number 1, step number 2, 3, 4, 5, by using that steps we have to solve the problems for the Buckinham's pi method. Okay, so whatever the drawbacks of the Rayleigh's method, so that drawbacks we have to remove in this Buckinham's pi theorem method. Okay, so now we have to solve the, write down the first problem, write down this problem, write down the resistance R, the resistance R experienced by a partially submerged body, the resistance R, the resistance R experienced by a partially submerged body, a partially submerged body depends upon the velocity v, partially submerged body depends upon the velocity v, comma, length of the body L, कशावर डिपेंड असणार आहे रेजिस्टन्स, इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द वेलोसिटी v, लेंथ ऑफ द बॉडी L, comma, viscosity of the fluid mu, viscosity of the fluid mu, viscosity of the fluid mu, comma, density of the fluid rho, density of the fluid rho, density of the fluid rho, and gravitational acceleration g, and gravitational acceleration g, gravitational acceleration g, full stop, obtain a dimensionless expression for r, obtain obtain a dimensionless expression, obtain a dimensionless expression for r. ओके, तर हा रेझिस्टन्स कशावरती डिपेंड आहे ते तुम्हाला पॅरामीटर्स दिलेले आहेत. तर ते आर चे इक्वेशन फाइंड आउट करायचं आपल्याला इन द फॉर्म ऑफ धीस पॅरामीटर्स अँड दॅट इक्वेशन बिकम्स डायमेन्शनलेस एक्सप्रेशन. ओके, सो राइट डाउन दी रेझिस्टन्स आर इज फंक्शन ऑफ सोल्युशन. आपण सोल्युशन स्टार्ट करतोय. सो फर्स्ट स्टेप, राइट डाउन द रेझिस्टन्स आर इज फंक्शन ऑफ. रेझिस्टन्स आर जो आहे तो कशा कशाचं फंक्शन आहे ते आपल्याला दिलेलं आहे. Okay, so first of all we have to write down that information. Write down the resistance r is function of, the resistance r is function of कशा कशाचं फंक्शन आहे. फर्स्ट velocity v, length l, viscosity mu, density rho and gravitational acceleration g. या पाच क्वांटिटी वर काय आहे, रेझिस्टन्स डिपेंड आहे. सो r is a function of velocity v, length l, viscosity mu, density rho and gravitational acceleration g. Gravitational acceleration g. Okay, so in the form of equation we have to write down the r is a function of, r is a function of v comma l comma mu comma rho comma g. Okay, r is a function of v comma l comma mu comma rho comma g. Okay, then again how to write this equation, that is f1. So we have to take the all quantities into one bracket, r also we have to take in that bracket. So therefore f1 in the bracket r v mu, sorry, r v l mu rho g is equal to 0. ओके, पहिल्यांदा आपण काय केले, आर इज ए फंक्शन ऑफ जे काही इंडिपेंडेंट व्हेरिएबल्स आहेत ते लिहिलेले आहेत आणि दुसऱ्या ब्रॅकेटमध्ये आपण काय केले, सगळेच व्हेरिएबल घेतलेले आहेत. सो देअरफॉर वी हॅव कन्वर्टेड एज ए f1. सो f1 into bracket all parameters are there is equal to 0. f1 is function of r v l mu rho g is equal to 0. Okay, next, so whatever the quantities we have to write down the all the dimensions of the each parameter. जे काही पॅरामीटर्स आहेत आपल्याकडे, म्हणजे रेझिस्टन्स असेल, वेलॉसिटी असेल, विस्कॉसिटी असेल, डेन्सिटी असेल, ऍक्सेलरेशन ड्यू टू ग्रॅव्हिटी असेल, लेंथ असेल, त्याचं युनिट आणि त्याच्या युनिटवरनं त्याचं डायमेन्शन काय आहे ते आपल्याला लिहायचं. ओके, सो ऑल ऑफ यू complete this dimension up to the next lecture. We have to complete this problem in the tomorrow's lecture. Okay, so thank you very much. All of you put your roll numbers in the chat box. Okay, sir, stop the recording and leave the meeting.